Ta-da! Good evening, ladies and gents. Welcome to another session from the Wise Asylum. It's just going crazy. Have you noticed? This Bolshevik set of crown pillocks. Oh dear heck. He's going to cut your bills by £400 a year, he says, 10 months before the election. And what's he gone and done? I can't believe we keep seeing these other faces about like Ed Miliband. I mean, are they still alive? Did nobody get them? What? I can't believe that the faces that are coming out now from the woodwork in this Bolshevik extravaganza that's going on all over Blighty. It's not good. It's outrageous. And I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed at all. I'm pretty sure you're not either. Anyway, not much we can do about that right now, is there? We just have to watch. So we're going to have another look at Stormer in a bit. Who funds him? Because as you can see, the game is set. You know, Tommy the Tit and his We're Out on an All-Day Bender crew kicked it off, and what are they doing? They're getting rid and sort of standing down anybody that's got a bit of guts about them. Under the threat of, you're going to prison for 25,000 years if you are stood next to a policeman and you smile at him. If there's a protest going on in London 600 miles away. That's the degree of the nonsense that's going on in the corporation, the United Kingdom. Are we members of the United Kingdom? Oh, we shite. No, we're not. We're not having it. We're not there. We're not doing it. So anyway, that's going down. They're now talking, we need to get rid of your dogs. Your dogs are dangerous to the Bolshevik. And of course, we're seeing now signs that actually a lot of these immigrants are not necessarily UN soldiers. They're imported ISIS. Oh, can you believe it? Well, why are you surprised? If you were paying attention to Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and the Middle East in general, you'd know that the NATO forces were the very forces moving these ISIS cells all around the war zone to cause havoc. They were arming them, they were training them, because they serve the military-industrial complex. And that's what they're doing now. So when you've seen these sorts of things where they say, oh, they're good, a container full of weapons, that's ISIS. That's ISIS. And we've got some plonkers here already playing on the ISIS gig. And now they don't have to sod off to Syria or to Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever else there's nonsense going on. They're getting it set up here. Oh dear heck. So they want to disarm you. So they've got these lunatics of a funny colour running around with knives and big knives and stabbing folk. And all they're concerned about, this Bolshevik set of penises, is, why, unky, give us your knife, give us your gun, and anything else you might have that might prick or hurt us. Are you seeing? Are you watching? Because that's what they're doing. And people really don't understand what these Bolsheviks do you? They're the most sadistic, insidious creatures ever to walk the face of the earth. I mean, most of what Third Reich got blamed for were actually the Bolsheviks doing it. The rape and the killing, the slaughter, yeah, it was Bolsheviks doing it. And it's been masked quite well, to be fair, because people today are a little bit not in the know of about just what these pillocks let loose when they get power, when, of course, the Crown has put them in now. And don't forget, Dr. John Coleman wrote a few books telling you he joined MI6 to fight communist regimes. Only to be put in Africa and realise, pretty sharpish, that the empire was actually installing these communist regimes all over Africa. And started to take notes their clever way. And that's where we worked out and found out that there was an ultra-national or international committee of 300 men and ladies. And that the old Queenie there, the one that everybody loves, pretty much sat at the top of it, signed everything off, because if you look at the documents that come out of the Committee 300, who signed it all off? Only Elizabeth II. So we've all been out for a very, very long time. It's not a short-winded gig, this. It's been going on for a long time. And I've had a very important visitor to the old Facebook this week. One thinks one might not be happy with one's brother. One thinks. Hint. I wonder if somebody wants to spill the beans a bit. And he's looking at the old Life in the Mix here. To spill them beans. Well, you're in the right guy, because I will spill them all. I don't really give a shit. If you give me a can of worms, I'll open it. I'll open it and throw it all over the show. I don't care. And I like the fact that this dream team that they've got going, with its King Alexia Jones and crew, Weinsteins, all these fruit bats, they're getting hammered a little bit here now, because people are starting to wake up to the fact that this is just a huge play to steal the alternative media away from anybody and everybody that might actually be saying something worthwhile. And the emotional cannons are going out everywhere as they get attacked, so that you all go, oh, the poor guy, look what's happening too, and we must give them more money and support them more, and listen to every word they say, because we're only using our emotions. We're not using intellect. We don't know how to do that. We only know how to rule on emotion, which believes any old shit and doesn't offer up any reason to what it is they're hearing and seeing. It's just we believe. I believe. Good tune that, actually, 90s. Excuse me. Yeah. So it's just more garbage, even more garbage, and just that little bit more on top as a sprinkle. But I don't like this Bolshevik gig. It's not good. I don't like what I'm seeing or hearing in relation to what could be between now and November. As the Americans decide, do they want a continuation of the Bolsheviks? Or do they want to bring in those guys that run the Bolsheviks? And the blonde bombshell over there, Mr. Trumpet. It's not a good deal over there for the Americans, I have to say. It's not looking good. And of course, if the world loses America, the world loses America. That's not a good idea for anybody, unless you're a fruit bat. And then you don't like freedom because you're unfit to be free, because you know you can't trust yourself, because you're a raging maniac, a sexual deviant, or you just want to kill everybody, rape everybody, enslave everybody. Because there's a lot of them about now, and they've flooded this country with them kind of minds. And as we can see, they're starting to use the pause against them they don't like. But yet the Bolsheviks are still saying, you wonky, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up and give us your knives. We're not bothered about these other fruit bats running around stabbing folk and aggravating the girlies. No, we're just concerned about you, your flag. You're not allowed to talk. You're not allowed to type things on the internet. She'll get smacked. Interestingly, that bunch of taskbags at Facebook, at Globe Centre in Accrington, decided yesterday, when I thought, I'll put my tunes up, showing off, of course, like you do. And no sooner than I put the link up, but I got this message saying through, your post has been taken down for misleading. And I'm like, I'm sure they made a mistake there. Or did I put something rude on the post before the link? So when I checked that, I hadn't put anything rude, nothing naughty, nothing. Just, what did I put? Oh, I said, it's free to listen, just press play. That's what I said. And apparently, because I put my own tunes up, on the face sake, I am misleading everybody to get follows, to get likes, and big myself up. Well, naturally, if I'm writing tunes, I want to big myself up, don't I? Because I want people to listen to them. But misleading was the word used, so I thought, I wonder which school they went to, them numpties at 77 Brigade and Unit 8200, because they're obviously thick, they don't know what misleading means. So I discussed it and I put it up again, and I got another one. They took it down because you're a puff. And I'm like, well, I'm not a puff, and I'm not misleading. So somebody in that face ache is a complete twat. And they don't want you to listen to my tunage. Which is disgusting, to be fair. It's not nice. It's not nice when you're a superstar like me to not be allowed to put your stuff out. Is it? How am I supposed to be a kick-ass rock and roll star if they won't let me do it? I don't know. It's like this place is just going worse and worse. I don't even know why I come. I think next time I might go to somewhere that's fluffy and like fairy cakes and things like that. Somewhere that's lovely and fantastic. Not this shit old shag-face place that's full of absolute fucking lunatics. But it is full of lunatics, I have to say. But yeah, it's good that the Dream Team are getting hammered because they are a bunch of tossers. And they are going to try and nick the entire truth movement to the self and cancel out everybody and anybody that doesn't suck the shit out Alexia Jones's bottom and his compadres. And of course he pushes the big trumpet, he's a big blonde bombshell supporter because of course he's always been funded by the no hides anyhow, which is why he hasn't had to pay any money because the whole court thing was a fake up. The whole thing on that court was just to scare people from outing the false flags that they have everywhere. And all in all, it's just very naughty. Are people still sicking it up? Because he's still getting 14 billion views an hour. Is he still pressing play like he used to do when he first started out? Because he used to, on his first thing he'd say when he come on his show was, press that like button and keep pressing play on all my videos so that it goes up and up and up and up and up. And that's how he made his gig, built it up by making people pretend they were watching it more than they did. So you could see the kind of character Alexia was back then, unfortunately. But here we are today. He's another hero. All these fake heroes talk shit, talk nothing. Do not put anything in the mix anymore outside this paradigm that they've got going, which makes them look good. Trump look fantastic. Bolshevism shit, which it is shit, but them that control trumpet control the Bolsheviks. As we're going to see in a bit with this fakey garbage that's going on here on Old Blighty with Stormer or Jimmy Savile's vagina. Because Jimmy Savile rinsed him as a kid. No wonder his eyes are too close together and he looks like... What does he look like? I can't caricature him, to be quite honest, because it's so freaky. I've never seen anything like it before in my life, so you've no points of reference, really, to go with it. So, but yeah. So he's feigning this, we hate you whiteys, because you're all white and you're living on your own country. And of course, all your ancestors' taxes and national insurance and such has given them the power that they've got. But they don't like you anymore. They fell out with you for some strange reason. And feigning this idea that actually we do support Islam because we love them when we're following them in. Well, really, we're going to look at who actually funds this sour shit. And why are they bringing them in? And pretending that they're on their side. Well, because quite clearly, the priesthood, that nasty priesthood at the top of the gig, it wants its worst enemies to go to war, doesn't it? So it doesn't have to deal with them later. And it's spending a lot of money. And it's spending a lot of money on blagging everybody so that they don't think that that's what's going on. So you're still picking a side on these two gigs when both, basically, only one side controls both sides, and he's trying to get you guys to get excited and have it. And it's like, are people going to see it this time? But then there's a new gig coming out in a bit to focus everybody's attention to. And it involves monkeys. Oh dear heck. So that's going to take everybody's attention, I would consider. And of course, they're just going to get away with it again, because everybody's going to start shitting themselves. And just turn the telly off, basically, is the best idea I can give you. Turn the telly off. That's where the virus comes from, and it goes straight into your mind, and you shit yourself. And that's it. That's the disease. It's called shitting thyself and obeying the talking heads. It's surely you're not going to do it again. Surely not, says I. Surely not. But we never know. Living in La La Land as we do, anything's possible, innit? I mean, an Ike, have you seen Ike running around calling everybody names? All this dream team, that's quite good. I'm quite impressed. Still not his friend, because he says I'm a lizard. And I'm not a lizard. I've tried to shapeshift. Every time I've tried to shapeshift on chaps, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. I'm not a lizard. So that's my only bone of contention with Ike. Otherwise, I'd say, come on, get on here. We'll do a gig, Ike. And you can tell us all about it. And we'll crack on. But if you think I'm a lizard, you're not going to want to come and talk to a lizard, are you? Let's be honest. So, anyway, but I'm impressed with what he's doing, because he's clearly not jumped onto the dream team, and that is good. He's getting shadow banned, he's getting his bum smacked. Just like they do with me from the get-go if I set anything up. As soon as I set it up, I'm shadow banned. Why do they not like me? What's going on? I mean, I'm even more amazing and fantastic than I were 3 years ago, and they still shadow ban me and say you can't put your tunes up. What are they playing at? It's like, I feel like Sex Pistols. Yeah, you know what I mean? Banned. Sex Pistols were banned everywhere, weren't they? But it usually works the opposite way. Everybody wants to listen. But I'm not doing the lyric that they all like now. I'm thick as fuck. Because I am thick as fuck. But somebody told me that I were good, and I believed it. Because I'm thick as fuck. Now, that's the lyric. If I started... Maybe that's the gig. I need to start lyricising in that manner, just thick. Then, maybe, the fruit bats will bombard me music sites, and I can be a kick-ass rock and roll star. So maybe I should start taking lessons off Stormzy and the like. Because I've listened to his tunes, and no matter what, the guy is thick. He's not only thick, he doesn't know he's thick. And it's sad, really, because that's influencing your flea bags who are thick. And that's why. So, I don't know. It's just outrageous, to be quite honest. It's absolutely... I'm outraged. The outraged moves. I see. It all works in sync, don't it? I'm outraged because I am the outraged muse. I mean, if they carry on, I really will start putting up some rebellious stuff that I wrote years ago. That'll scare them to death. But we'll not do that tonight. We'll keep it civil. So anyway, who has joined us on Tonight? It says benefactor there. What is that sign anyway? Oh, a diamond. Hi Sean and all the awesome Life in the Mix live viewers. Big shout out to everyone tuning in today, whether for insights, laughs, or just the vibes. And he says thumbs up. So he's the benefactor. You better do as he says. You know what I'm saying? We're all trustees on here. Do as he says, or he'll put you in jail. Slipknot says, alright Sean, Jacqueline, and everybody. Alright Slipknot, nice to meet you Jacqueline. By the way. Mark Ortford. Mark, how are you doing? And I met him this week as well. What a fine fella. And just to let you all know, that because it's not known, but most of the data that were collected in relation to the book script, especially what was going on in them homes, comes to you courtesy of a Mr. Mark Ortford. And of course, everybody nicked it. All your stars of the show basically took his data and nicked it, and then claimed it. Or if they didn't claim it as their own, they certainly didn't point it to the author of it. So well done to you, sir, who spent a lot of hours putting it all together and shared it with everybody, who then run off. So evening to you, Mike, and it was very nice to meet you. Mew says, a morning, afternoon, evening, one and all, Sunday sermon in the Wise Asylum. Hello, Mew. The Lone Rizzler. Evening, Sean and everyone. Good evening to you, Lone Rizzler. June says, good evening, Sean and chat. Good evening to you, June and Ulick. I still can't get over your name. Ulick McGee says, hey, y'all. Well, hey, y'all to you, sir. Paul Sefton says, good evening, Sean and fellow inmates. Good evening to you, Paul. And Big E says, evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good to be here again from Devon. I added the Devon because that's where he's from. Hello, Big E. Cause 1973, he's thinking. You get thinking, me old China. Good evening to you, Cos. Profiler X, good evening all. Good evening to you, Profiler. And PY Music says, good evening all. Good evening to you, Paul. Have you got your teeth yet? Tassrikin says, evening, Sean. Good evening to you. Happy Camper says, good evening all. Where is Stormer? Well, where is he? I don't know. Setting up concentration camps, I think. Well, they are building some huge prisons, have you forgot? I think some of them hold 36,000 inmates. That's 36,000 white honkies that dare look at a policeman if there's a protest going on in New York. Then you're going to get done because you could have been watching it on your phone and therefore you are taking part in a protest. So I don't know where he is. Hiding, probably. Happy Camper, yeah. Happy Camper says, I wondered if this new drive that the Royal Mail has to identify houses with dogs in his party to make it easier to find them. Look, I know it sounds like I'm being flippant, but I've studied the Bolsheviks from before they kicked off, right through their takeover of Russia, what they did in Russia, how they played the Third Reich by becoming it, and what they did. I kid you not. These guys make every horror movie you've ever seen look tame. And yet, everything you've ever seen in these horror movies is what they do. Because they like it. They like that kind of stuff. Do not fool yourselves that all that's going on now isn't about disarming you. That's exactly what it's about. And dogs, they're scared of dogs, aren't they? So you're going to have to start getting smart and improvise. Like, jet washes can be useful. Stuff like that. Start to think outside the box. If they take something off you, create something else. Because I'm telling you, at some point down this line, because I know you're all not going to wake up, it's coming. Yeah, and if they're arming these fruit bats that are coming in, you start working out how you're going to organise to take it all off them. Yeah. Don't shit yourself. Don't sit there going, go. Well, we don't have any weapons, but if they're pumping them into these fruitcakes, then we need to take them off them. Don't we? I mean, have you seen some of these drones they've got going on? These little tiny things. Oh my God. I think I put one up on FaceAche earlier. I mean, you're going to need a jet wash for that, for a start. To put these, you know what I mean? It's a weapon, isn't it? It's a great thing. If you can use, just think a jet wash is absolutely an amazing piece of kit. And then, of course, depending on what fluid you put in it, depends on what it is. But I didn't really say that, because that's very naughty. But what I'm saying is, you're going to have to start thinking, because these bastards are coming for all your methods of self-defence. Because these ISIS guys are a bit shit-screwed, you see. They're only brave when they've got all the military behind them. Well, of course, the military they're going to have behind them here is the UN. All everybody's are playing out somewhere down in Europe, tossing around like a bunch of shaggy asses. Because they're doing what they're told. Aren't they? Anyway, that's that. So yeah. But why do you think they wanted them all chipped? Why do you think they want them all registered? You know, and they've got everybody excited on collecting dog poo in little bags. Why? Because the council can't be asked to clean up. And you've done it for them. That's paying them and then doing it for them. Because you're clever. Oh, you're clever. Yeah. Liam says hello. Hello, Liam. David Gregg says, evening all. Hope all is well. I hope all's well with you too. Good evening to you. Lex says, evening Sean and all. Evening Lex. Alexander, how are you doing, old China? Evening Sean and evening to all. Good evening to you. A benefactor says, Money Dax. Money Dax? What's that, some foreign currency? Amgmaniac. Amgmaniac. Evening one and all, I've actually made it from the start for once. Currently in Devon, taking a few months out with my pack of working security dogs. Ooh, interesting. Good evening to you, the old China. Profile X says the Holodomor looks tame to what they have in stock for us. Oh, honestly, you really need to start to look at what these Bolsheviks do. And then you can stop listening to them when they pump the shit out at television at the moment. Because they're assholes. These guys are the puke of the puke. Oof. And Egmaniac says, Holodomor was the practice run for the rest of the Gentiles. Indeed, says Profiler X. Oh, I mean, you know, you'll all start winding up at some point, but it's just not going to be fun when they kick that off because the state will be protecting them. You know, the state is, you've got to see this as it works. The state has now been completely compromised by the corporate side of things, which is the Crown, which is the Holy See banking dynasties, trustees of which is the Rothschilds and everything that comes under the Rothschilds. You know, they're moving on in a fine fettle, clearing out the Ukraine, ready for the elites, or the Bolshevik elites, to move out of Israel in readiness for the unleashing of the other fruit bats down there in the Middle East to absolutely annihilate a big part of those that are going to be left behind in the old Israel. You know what I'm saying? That's what's going on. That's what's happening. You know, Perth's being filled by these ultra priesthood fruitcakes too. You know, they're getting right out of the way. You can see it. You can see the game going on everywhere. It's not funny. And I mean, all you fruit bats in Dubai, well, fine, you might be having a good gig there, unless your toilet's blocked after the playing with the old ginger engineering. But what do you think is going to happen when it kicks off between Christianity and Islam? What do you think is going to happen to you? What do you think is going to happen? That's how clever you've been, really clever. You've left your country that needed you and put yourself into a trap. Just like all the police and all these security people that go, why don't you come and live with us, come and live in, we've apportioned this. And you think it's great because you're being protected, but hang on a minute, down the line, when you're being told to do things that you don't want to do, they're going to say, guess who's got your family, son? Now get out there like a good little Bolshevik and do exactly what you're told. That's another part of the Bolshevik game. That's how they do it. It's so precision, everything they do. You know, you've got now, we can clearly see that, like, happening in Germany, you've got all your military, you've got your police, your domestic security. And then all of a sudden, at command level, in come these SS, Gestapo, they come in and just completely take over the entire gig. You know, did you not watch 63 Squadron, Great Escape? You not watch it? You know, that's how it works, folks. And all these people that think they're in the little safe enclaves, yeah, it's not what happens. It's not how the gig goes. It doesn't. It really doesn't go that way at all. I don't know. Oh dear heck. Where are we there? AMG, as per the Mercedes name. AMG Maniac, got you. They make some good racket, them AMGs, I have to say, don't they? Are they as quick as they look? Because they do make a good racket. I know girls don't like it, but us boys like it. We like noise. and bangs and things like that. We like it. We just do. Right, anyway, so what I've put together today is... so it's just data that we're collecting on, of course, as we're dealing with this this trust game, what it is, how they've put it together and what have you. But and like I said last week, you know, nobody seems to come up with any ideas. But the fact is, I'm quite happy that we've sussed it, or I've sussed it, and I know what it is that's set up in that immediacy when Mum goes to visit Eve, the apple lady. So anyway. Yep, got it, says AMG. Yes, we do like them AMGs. They look nice and they sound good. No, are they as fast as the RS? Them the old Audis. With the old Olympic rings. Because they're quite quick, aren't they? Them RSs. Anyway, right, enough cars. Because we do like cars. And if we start chatting about cars, we'll just be chatting about cars, won't we? So, right. So this is what... So I've just pulled together stuff that we've been playing with and just to give you further insight into what sort of data you need to be looking at when you sort of Brabus, says Benefactor. Yeah, that's another like AMG gig in it that get the mix into the cars. And what's the other one for Rolls Royce? Mansory. Have you seen what they do to them Rolls Royces? Wow. So a little piece of a Mansory that big is about 55,000 million quid. Just to give you an insight, it's like, wow. These, of course, not for us lowly people, although we could just watch them on telly and videos. We're not allowed to get out and play with them, of course, because Facebook won't let me put my tunes up. Anyway, birth data. And there's a little flea bag inside the mum. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? How could anybody possibly think that letting loose the abortion murderers on that is a good thing? Something seriously gone wrong, hasn't there, with the old women, because they're not females, that think that annihilating that little flea bag inside the belly is a good gig. So... yeah, I mean, look at that little flea bag. There he is, 100% relying on his mother's sanity as to whether he's going to come out in one piece or he's going to let them masochists or Bolsheviks get in there with them big pincers and start chopping arms and legs off, crushing heads and stuff like that, which is exactly what they do when they carry out them gigs. It's just not good, is it? Let's be honest. Yeah. But yeah, there he is, a little flea bag. Or she, maybe. 100% relying on mum being sane. And if she's not, poor little thing. That's all I can say. Now, of course, once mother goes to visit Eve, little thing in there, sent to us by the ultimate creator, becomes a concept. Becomes a concept. Yeah, a concept conceived on behalf of the church, or the Vatican State as it is today. It's certainly not the church, is it? And of course the doctor docks it all together, pulls it into the port, and the big game commences. And Eve's on standby, waiting for the serpent to take a bite of the fruit of the womb. Of course, that is the placenta, isn't it? That's the fruit she's having. So it says a person, basically, when you were born, they actually set up the trust. Somebody put an amount of money in there which you don't own. So when you actually close down the trust, you give back that, and then you can, under the Seska v Trust Act, Section 4, once you've proved you're alive, you can actually claim the profit and the accumulated interest from the start of the trust, but you can't claim the trust itself. It's that's what you're retaining, the initial money that actually set up the trust in the first place. You never own that because somebody else put that in, which is the case, isn't it? You know, all these certificates that are put out there. The form itself is copyrighted to the Crown. What's written in it isn't. That's yours, but the actual form is copywritten to the Crown. So it's not the data in it, it's just the form. You've got to remember that. You can't claim the trust because the trust never belongs to you. No, you're not claiming it. But like any good executor or settler or benefactor, you can administer it. Usufruct is what the people call the Sesquiv Trust, because of course it is being used under usufruct, isn't it? Basically, Sesquiv Trust says, but that's in a sense that what happens with it, because there is an amount put in there for you, which is usually your weight in gold. Well, it is here. It is here. In America, I think it's $999,000 that's put into the kitty. And I did see the Queen speaking in those terms about it actually being your weight in gold. But is it the placenta, I think, that's more than likely being weighed, because of course that is what is abandoned and that the church is claiming, which of course is dead, isn't it? It dies. Abandoned it is, and away they go. The initial money you don't own because somebody set that for you, so when you shut down the trust, you give them back. Give them that back. Well, I'm not so sure that you actually do give them that back, as it were, but, you know, it could be the case, but I think it stays in there until it matures, and then either at age 70, when it's matured, then it gets paid back, and the government keep the hidden ledger, which is where all the bonds and securities are all held in the national insurance account or social security account if you're in the US. But there is a lot of profit and interest that's been made on that. And of course, if there's an access to anything, that would be what it is. Now, somebody said that they saw their own account and it's been held in the Abbey National Trust as a treasury account in Jersey. Interesting, and that it is on the birth certificate and national insurance number, which is interesting, because they would be offshore, wouldn't they, naturally? But they're suggesting you can't access it because it doesn't belong to you. Well, it might not belong to you, but you are the beneficiary. And of course, the trustee has to act for the beneficiary. They can't harm the beneficiaries. If it was as simple as that, then they wouldn't need you to hold the surname. So it is set up in its original form that you actually are the beneficiary, and that the trustee has to ensure that the beneficiary isn't harmed. The trickery comes in the fact that they're not allowing you to take the proper role. And of course, we're learning that actually it's very difficult to take the correct role because they've got it so wrapped up like a Russian doll. It just keeps going on and on and on, further and further and further. Grammar is important, words are important, jurisdiction's important, and of course we're not part of the law society, so we're not taught this stuff. And those that are taught the stuff took an oath to keep the trap shut, and they're of course the all court officers, so you don't want to be playing out with them kind of geezers. So where are we? So basically, as we all know, we've got to prove life. And there is a statement of live birth that's created in the hospital, which registers the fact that a child has been born. Now, of course, at this point, it's a child, it's not a baby. When you're looking at the terminology, it's very important to look at the words they don't use, as opposed to necessarily trying to work out the words that they do use. Because the words that they don't use them because they're not the words and terms that they're using in their system. And then you can start to consider using the words that they don't use, or at least defining them, and then you can start to work your paperwork out in tune with the words that are not set and fixed into this legal system. So we know there's a live born record. I think Ron Laney's last year's videos were talking about that's what he achieved, and that is what appeared to give him the power of direction, at least according to the magistrate that ended up having an heart attack. Now, we're working on the long form, which is the registered entry or certified copy of an entry. But it only has the first name. Now, we're going to look at in a bit here at how the church has played a game against you if you claim to be a Christian. I've mentioned before that the church claims the surname, but actually it doesn't actually use the term surname, it uses the term last name. So, but we know that in the way we understand it, the last name is always the surname. Because when you get into this game properly, and you look at your council tax bills and such, they're fixing you to Admiralty because the surname comes first and it's all in uppercase. There's two languages basically. There's a language for the land, which is English grammar, and then there's a language of Admiralty, which is uppercase, all of it. It's actually the language that the Admiralty use. So I know we know it's dog Latin, I know we know it's not grammatically correct, but in Admiralty jurisdiction it's absolutely correct. So every time you see uppercase on everything, they're telling you clearly. So whether it's the county court act, whatever, you're telling you that this jurisdiction, this communication has come from, is Admiralty. It's not land law, it's not common law, it's Admiralty law. So, now, we've looked into this, haven't we? So, according to Romney, the statement of live birth is required in order to... Because if you're holding that, you're proof of being alive. Yet, from what I've understood about the legal system, it's not necessarily all documentation that has to be put into play. It's action. Yeah? Actions are as important as words and paper. Yeah? It's really important. So much of legal system is based on action as well as paperwork and words. It's really important that people understand that. So, as I've said before, if you're going to put yourself up to be executor, you better know how to be executor, because if you're not presenting yourself as being capable of acting as an executor, it doesn't matter what you've got, they're not really going to take you seriously. The act is more important, I would say, or at least as important as the paperwork. And we know that once the event is recorded, the sole print today is put on the paper, off it goes to the registrar, who holds that record of the event. And then, of course, the child gets registered, and the body of the child, which is not a baby, remember, that's not in the terminology of the child, is a ward of the state, and it becomes connected to the father's surname, and the sins of the father then pass on to the child. And of course, because you're sinful, the old church there or the Vatican has to look after you because you're a monster. I'm getting right ahead of myself here. So the midwife records that. But first, before that, now this is what I've said that I've sussed this week and we're investigating it, but I'll tell you what, I'm right. That before the birth event and the registration event, there is a number created, and that's your health number. Yeah, your national health number. And that's where the midwife records an event before these other two, which is why the church says, it knew you, I know you before you were born. Now remember, this is a mimic, this is a piss take by the adversary on the biblical doctrine. So you've got the biblical doctrine, and if you're using your intellect, not your emotion, you will understand what it's saying as opposed to believing what it's saying, because the narrative has already been implanted. And it's so imperative that intellect is how you approach any doctrine. Because if you're just approaching things and judging things and comprehension through your emotions, you don't stand a chance, because the emotions are pretty thick when it comes to seeing the play in word wizardry. It's just not the correct format to apply when you're looking into to doctrine and to anything. It's the same with the legal system. when you're studying their works, if you want to comprehend it, you couldn't possibly do it if you're running on emotion. Your emotions can't understand the way it's set up. It's the intellect. It's been set up by intellect to fool the emotion. And so if you're not massaging your own intellect, you're never going to comprehend fully what it is you're reading and what it is you're hearing, whether you're just doing this as a study or you're studying a court, popping your pants because, of course, you don't know what the hell's going on, but you know you're going to get your bottom smacked. You know what I'm saying? And it's the midwife that plays this game. She is Eve in this game. And, of course, if you get into the Jewish lore, Adam is a golem. He was created from dust. He wasn't created from the light of the Father or the Word, as it were. The Father that's been hidden through the mistranslation of the Hebrew, you know, who makes it clear that he created the Elohim too. So we're fixed at the Elohim as the almighty everything, and no wonder we've got 3 religions with 3 gods. Because that's a hierarchy of them, there's tons of them. But ultimately, the real Heavenly Father, who's in all this stuff, but your emotions can't see it, intellect is the key. Because it's intellect that's given us the idea and shown us that they've mistranslated the Hebrew. The emotions are not going to play that game, and they're just going to, oh, swear at it, believe. I will follow, as it were. Or I will believe, because that is the gig. So where are we here? Now, it's being said that if you can't get this live birth stuff from the NHS, you can go to the Midwife Association. I've tried to find the Midwife Association, but I can't find it. There doesn't seem to be one. Maybe what they're saying there is that there's actually one in each hospital, separate, for the midwifery section, because it is its own gig. You know, it's just operating in the temple as a priestess, as it were. You know, and the doctor's the corporate side. The midwife, I would suggest, is the priestess side. So that they're all operating in the temple, called the hospital, but they all have different roles, different departments, and I suppose that, again, is a mimic of how a sort of a church might work. You know, you've got your bishop. Well, I actually don't understand how they work fully because, you know, I've never sort of immersed myself too far in such things because it limits. You know, you can't limit if you're going to limit your intellect, you've had it. Really, no, you can't do that. It's just not going to work for you. Say it started in 1825, and of course we've talked many times that the UK is a corporation. You don't want to be in the UK. For example, if you go to the website where I've put up the conditional acceptances, it pretty much shows you how to address yourself in relation to putting without the United Kingdom and bracket it and bracket your number of the house, because of course these are all joinder traps that they use. So if you don't rebut an assumption, it's accepted. You remember that. You know, that's a presumption of court. If it's not rebutted, it's accepted, and that's the way they see it. So everything has to be a rebuttal to whatever nonsense they put into you, which is what I've been doing this last... It's actually 6 months I've been on this gig. I thought to keep saying 3 months. I'm way out. It's 6 months I've been putting this stuff together. And it's rebuttal after rebuttal after... Everything they put at you, you rebut it. You rebut it, you rebut it. It's the chess game, it really is. And of course we all know that we're trying to take ourselves out of the system, albeit put ourselves in REM or outside of it, and that's where the benefactor comes in. Because the benefactor is one who deposits, yet it isn't actually a part of the res, which is what they're shoving you in as by taking or holding the surname. Again, we've talked about the fact that the courts can't recognise a living man. So I've changed the addresser side of the way I present things now to the name, your given calling, because it is actually a calling. You know, what do you tell your kids? What are you called? And what did you call it? That's actually what we used to speak in terms of, not what's your name, that's the program side. But from a natural standpoint, when you're talking to people, oh, what are you calling him? That is the normal term, isn't it? And it's not what you find in their system. So again, that's a word that is associated with what are you calling the flea bag, without using the terms that we know they use in their system. You know what I'm saying? Baby, another. It's just, look at the terms they don't use and define it, and can you use it? And if you're using it in paperwork, put it in your interpretations. So for me now, I've added to my interpretations human, and I've defined it as a concept conceived on behalf of the Church or Vatican. I haven't decided whether I'm putting Church in or Vatican, because the mimic is calling itself the Vatican, and we know that the Vatican State was formed in 1929, and it was formed by the fascists, and that the Church has just been thrown asunder through Vatican II. So all this mimic and all this commerce, I think we have to start to recognise is the mimic of whatever the Church was doing before, and has fixed it into commerce. Because all this was being done from the 1800s, fixed again when they took us off the gold standard, 1933, they set the system in play and then launched the Second World War. So by the end of the Second World War, everything they put in place from 1933 to 1945 was the new reset, and nobody remembered any different. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing happening today. All this shifting, this changing, crypto, this blockchain, this climate taxation, pulling in all our electricity and gas and calling it energy into these corporate side of things, is all being set up now before the madness that they're about to carry out. So that when that's all over, everybody's completely forgot what we were all fighting at this stage, and then it's just thrown in, that is the reset, and nobody's any the wiser. You know, this is what I've noted in as patterns, as it might be. When you study history, it's all patterns. And once you can see the patterns, then you can reference it to the game they're playing today, and you can see the same pattern. Obviously, it's just different subject matter that they're perhaps using, but it's the same pattern. They don't change because they operate into very ancient doctrines, to very ancient set pieces. It's like I said before, they're not super intelligent. They've just been brought up with these set pieces, and then they appear to be expert at it, when in fact they're just copying. Like anybody really, if you're going to university, you're copying, you know, and your degree is going to be sort of branded according to the depth to which you can copy. And when you're copying, you're not using your intellect, are you? That's what this system's all about. It's about cancelling out your need to use the intellect when you're looking at whatever it is you're being taught, and just to accept it as a copy on belief and then parrot it. Become another version of it. Because ultimately it's a pyramid scheme, and somebody at the top of that gig is going to make a shitload of money out of you copying that system. And on it goes. And that's what it's all about. University, very rarely, I mean, there's going to be some subjects, don't get me wrong, where you're actually going to learn something. So for geology, maybe chemistry, biology, these sort of subjects, you can actually learn something of value. But anything that's like math, you know, that's sort of accounting or judiciary or military or any of these, military, you're actually learning some skills-based survival. But what I'm saying is the majority of things that you're going to learn in universities, like social care and health and all this shit, mental health, you're only being taught a program that the system's set up for you to earn, but ultimately to benefit those that actually control that system. You're not actually learning anything of value. This is why I've always been happy to be a builder, Because a builder is an honest trade, as long as you're not robbing folk, because people pay you for what it is they want to be done, and you do that for them, and then they've got what they want, which is either an extension, your roof's not leaking, you've got new windows, you've got whatever it is you want, you got your house built. It's an honest trade. And of course, I'm not talking about cowboy builders, but in general, as a contract, as an exchange, it's an honest gig. They pay, you make. They get what you want, they pay you the rest. It's honest. And as a builder, you've learned something of value. You know what I'm saying? If it all goes to, I can build an house. I can dig an hole for water. There's nothing that I won't be able to put myself to that way, kind of thing. But if you're an accountant and it goes tits up, going in forest and counting is not going to really build you anything, make you anything, or help you to survive. And it's the same with all these university programs. It's a program, you're copying it. If you're good at it, you'll get a master's degree. You're not clever, you're not smart, you're a dumbass. But you think you're clever, you think you're smart, that's all they need. Because you'll spend the rest of your life thinking you're smart, thinking you're clever, because you've got what it is you're happy with. You know what I'm saying? No more than what you're happy with, but if you're happy, you'll think you're smart till the day you die and meet your maker and then see what a complete plonker you've been. Because all you've done is serve the adversary and his world. So again, these documents are important because it shows your holding of it, your interest in it. We've gone through all this DNA stuff, haven't we? The public pool, the chromosomes, etc., etc. Now, the concept is the human. Of course, the human can't be sovereign. The human, according to Valentine's, is a monster. And if you get into Catechism of the Catholic Church, it's very clear that in that, once the conception of the human is formed, then the Church has to afford to that concept the rights of a person, of personage. So you can see the whole game going on. It's the human, the term human. And anybody, you got these human rights going on everywhere. Can you see how they fix you? Because you're running on emotion and not intellect. How, well, my human rights and my human rights this. Why the fuck would you want to be on human rights? You're cementing yourself as running around as the concept that that's assumed by the church when Mum goes to visit Eve. And that's before the birth. The concept is created at that point. The human. And that's why the church says, I knew you before you were born. Yeah, of course they did. They knew you were a human because that's what they decided. And then we play along with that because we don't know any different. Yeah? So who you really are, coming from the Heavenly Father, as it were, and then looked at the timelines, didn't we? How the Jews count from 0 to 1. The Christians actually are not counting from 1 to 2024. They're actually counting from the point Mother goes to the midwife, or Eve, and the concept is created. So conception doesn't mean what we think it means, where it means that the day that the egg was fertilized. The conception in this system is the point at which the human is registered as being, oh, in mummy's tummy. Yeah, or the tummy of the parent. Because all this has gone on to them before through their mother and father being a bit thick. And it just keeps passing on and passing on and passing on. And the adversary's creation is huge. So you might say, ultimately, the beneficiary is the baby. Or the creation formed from outside of this sphere. So then thus it would be the beneficiary. But it would also be the benefactor. Or would it? Yeah? These are concepts that we have to really think about solidly to get it right. Now, working on this idea again, as we've looked at with the Hebrew mistranslated, and fixing us to the Elohim's realm as being the ultimate, when in fact it's not the case at all, then the baby wouldn't be classed as I am, would it? Because I am references the Elohim, the gods of the Elohim, yeah? So that's Yahweh, that's Allah, Zeus, it's Kronos, all the icons as they were. And I mean, of course, when you're talking about reptilians and you're talking about demons, you're talking about entities that belong in this paradigm of the Elohim. Yeah, that's who we're talking about. This is who they are. So they are part of the creation. They've always been part of the creation. And it would appear that at different stages, these Elohim have interfered in the earthly realm and left their estate. And that's what we're talking about. So, you know, when we start talking about the extraterrestrial, well, okay, it could be to a point in a sense, but, you know, it would appear they're all actually creatures that were created by this ultimate He, the Heavenly Father. And what we're seeing and witnessing in a lot of the histories and doctrines is the battles between these Elohim as they've controlled man and had man pretty much carrying out from in a physical form on the earth. And we're still there today. There's no change there. And then you get the idea nothing new under the sun. No, it's just a rerun and a rerun and a rerun and a rerun of these wars between the icons. That to me makes perfect sense. So for the baby to be outside this system and the beneficiary, then it would have to be the one who is, not the one I am. You with me? I am fixes you to the priesthood that's running this system in commerce and pushing it into the Noahide, and that would be Adam Kadmon. No? Yeah. Is it Adam Kadmon? Yeah, I think so. Who's the androgynous? So again, it's another Elohim. And it could very well be Yahweh. I don't know. I'm not had time actually to give these things any more study, as it were, but I'm still running off stuff that I learned many, many moons ago, but trying to apply it into today a bit, you know, so we can get a better gig. So, and as I said before, when I was studying the Eastern stuff back in the 90s, I was studying Buddhism, I was studying the Sanskrit, but as an oversoul to that, I was studying transcendentalism. And, you know, you can see that a lot of the Eastern stuff is actually based in what we term transcendentalism, and that Buddhism and a lot of the Sanskrit stuff are basically aspects of that ultimate doctrine, you might say. That were my opinion. Now, in transcendentalism, the one thing that it were getting across as a serious protocol was the fact that it's, you're not am, you is. Am's descriptive of a thing, where is just is. It's what is. Yeah? You can't be described what is, because it's everything. Well, as soon as you get to I am, you've took a bite from what is and formed it into a thing that you're trying to describe. Do you know what I'm saying? And then it can be controlled, and then it can be analysed and put into this box, and then something else that may apport. Well, there's another thing. It's an am, and you again, and so you're playing with these parts of the whole and putting them into boxes, into cupboards, into files, and such like. And for me, who is by far superior to I am. If you want to move back into the creation, as it were. So I can't, in that sense then, we're going against what we presented in the timeline PDF the other week, or maybe month. Because by that then we have to accept that actually the Christian calendar doesn't begin at 1. It begins at the conception, which is usually pretty close to 0 when Mum is off to visit Eve, isn't it? So, again, it puts a bit of a more applied intellect is required to the timelines kind of thing. Yeah, before you start throwing it around in paperwork, because I haven't put it in any paperwork, of course, because it doesn't sit. It's interesting. It deserves attention. But it just, I've not sat and thought, I've got it, I've seen it, I've found it, it fits. So it doesn't fit with that, it got here, and it doesn't. So I wouldn't use it. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't use it. But I'm still looking at it. It's there. It's a possibility. But I'm not going to start writing it off and sending it off all over straight so I can look like a fruit bat. So we can see why the Vatican State wants all births in the hospitals, and the hospitals are the temples of the Knights Hospitallers. We've discussed this. And then you're in a temple, so of course everything in there is a ritual. Everything is a ritual. Yeah, the cutting of the cord is a ritual. The footprint on the paper is a ritual. Not allowing the blood from the placenta to flow back into the baby is a ritual. It's a blood ritual, because they're preventing almost a third of the blood that the baby needs from going into the baby. And then what they're doing, another ritual, they're starting to stab it with stuff. Yeah, I mean, this is a sacrificial ritual. And it might not be an instantaneous death sacrifice, but the rituals that are being carried out in that temple at the birth are basically in order to sacrifice that flea bag to their god at the given time. And all the other intrusions that they're going to insist you do are part of that sacrifice ritual. So somebody said last week, do you think the midwives know? It's very possible that they don't. However, ignorance is not an excuse. Just like the accountant who thinks he's fantastic and amazing because he's earned a fortune, he's going to be in a shock of his life if he thinks he's actually achieved anything of value. No, he's served this system. And of course you're not going to realise and know until you pop your clogs, and then you're probably going to have to come back again and go through all the same stuff. But I don't know whether that's correct or not. You know, we're guessing. We're not guessing, we're investigating, you know. So severance, again, that's a word used in a lot of these rituals. And this, you know, the product of the womb, the fruit of the womb is the baby, but also the placenta. And being sadistic death cult that they are, they want that. You know, that's what they want. So there's a severance. And then a trust is created. Yeah? Mother claims ownership of the baby. But then, again, as we said, on the documents, when you look at from the hospital, when it's showing the event of the birth, the mother's maiden name's in there, but they're not interested in her nationality. But when it comes to the father, who's then joined with the midwife to sign off this conjoinment to the surname, the father's nationality is required. And that in and of itself is interesting because, of course, it's presenting him as a citizen and thus subject to this gig. Now, naming something, as I said, it's a calling, isn't it? And that calling is usually worked out before the birth or the born, the flea bag being born. But through this paperwork, this ritual going on in the hospital, it becomes a name, it becomes a child, and you're a parent. And yeah, so everybody's fixed, and everybody keeps fixing the next generation until the chains are broken. And we know it's about dominion rights. But then, of course, that comes from the Elohim, doesn't it? So, interesting. More to be known in relation to this gig. Now, proper grammar such as Johnny, capital J, small cap, Onny, that's the language of the land. Okay, that's the English grammar. And of course, French is also allowed in Roman court. So that's denoting Johnny's on the land, ladies and gentlemen. But then after the shindig that's going down, especially the registration, when father goes in and says, yeah, this little flea bag, Johnny, is now lipstick. Of course, we did one video a couple of years ago on Johnny Lipstick, do you remember? Just taking the piss out of it all because it is deserving of mockery, this entire mimic. So grammar in Admiralty shows itself as Johnny English grammar, but then Admiralty comes in and you've got lipstick, Johnny Lipstick, and now he's on the sea. Whack. So all of a sudden he's floating on there in a ship, the Trust. Just Johnny as an appellation is what people call a thing. Yeah, it's a thing. It's not a name unless you make it so. Thus, Johnny as a baby is under the dominion of the mother, and she's called it Johnny. But now it's becoming name, because of course these are the terms they use in this paper house of cards, as old Alice in Wonderland tells us. Now, this is another interesting thing when you get into the Bible, you know, isn't it? When Sarah's being told that there's twins in her belly, and that the firstborn will become subject to the secondborn. So think of it in these terms now, because this system's as old as time. So the mother releases the firstborn, which is the baby, isn't it? And then the second release, or the secondborn, is the thing, the placenta. So now we can see, when you apply your intellect to that information, that he's telling you that this is exactly what's going on. And so you can see that Abraham sacrifice of his firstborn, blah de blah de blah. There's the data in relation to the twins, because the firstborn becomes subject to the placenta, the dead entity, as it's fixed on paper. Can you see if intellect over emotion, the entire biblical script has a completely different meaning? The same as we've looked before when we applied chemistry to it, and we've applied astrology to it, with a little help from Claudio. Yeah, it's intellect over emotion every day. Intellect, you're on the path to know. Emotion, you're a believer, you're a copier, because you can't be asked to think, or you don't have the capacity, you've not massaged the muscle. So the placenta could be seen to be the secondborn, and that the firstborn through this system becomes subject to the secondborn. How sad of a situation is that? And the placenta, of course, is abandoned by the mother, or nicked, because they nick it. And once that's been abandoned, the state claims it under salvage laws of the sea. And that's potentially what they're measuring in gold, because of course that's what they're owning. That's the sort of the capital, you might say, that they're putting into this system until Dad puts you in as the res. So the res originally is the weight in gold, borrowed from the IMF. And of course, Dad's then gonna put your little flea bag in there as the res, because he's a bit thick, and he's been tempted by Eve. So having claimed the abandoned product, they then name it, and that's of course the surname, isn't it? The last name. And then they claim ownership and dominion, because if you name a thing, you own, you control, you've dominion over the thing. Yeah, and it's a mimic, isn't it? Because it's a conjoining of the calling given to the baby by the mother. And the father, of course. But once they become parents, it's a naming. And everything that they're doing in this system is a mimic. You've got to see it like that. You know, if you understand the Norse doctrine, again, Loki, it's there, who has a role to play, because what he's mimicking is not the original creation. He's mimicking the mimic, like the jester did with the kings. You know, keeping the feet on the ground, like the Greeks had, didn't they? They had a talker who reminded the Romans that they were always just a man. They're not gods, and reminded them of that, to keep the feet on the ground so they don't go up their own ass. But of course, in the Norse tradition, you've got Ragnarok. Okay, and of course, then if you get into that tradition, that Odin is actually collecting the greatest warriors, isn't he? To do the battle in the last battle of Ragnarok, when the realm of the Elohim is to be destroyed completely. Not the heaven or the Heavenly Father's realm, but the realm of the Elohim. That's Ragnarok. All the gods and all the goddesses. It's all going to be reformed. Now, if you take some of the old Catholic traditions, that what's actually going to happen at this is, at the moment we've got hell, we've got earth, and we've got heaven. But after this gig, this timeline, the end of this game, there's only going to be heaven and hell. No, hang on, have I got this wrong? No, yeah, no, wait a minute, let me start that again, because I've got a little bit cocked up there. So there's heaven and hell. Earth is the mid-earth, as you might say, because it's all part of earth. And there's a realm in which I think it's the lower fourth dimension, which is the place that these demonic creatures play, and that these rituals that are being carried out by these black magicians are opening portals to that lower place and pulling them in, and then operating for them. But at the end of this time, that place is going to end. You're either going to be on the timeline to hell, because you've not applied intellect to the doctrines, and thus your actions in their entirety are on the path as given by the adversary. So there's only going to be a hell timeline and a heaven timeline. There's going to be no in between after this. So that is why it's so important that we cleanse ourselves. And now, I'm not suggesting for a second this is all going to happen in the next 200 years. I don't know the end of this cycle. But at the end of this ultimate cycle, the learning that we're all here to achieve as a spiritual being is to not tread the path or timeline that's going to take you to hell when you get to that end point, because you're going to be fixed there. There's no escape, there's no nothing, and the energy can be annihilated, because that's the real science, not the pseudo-science. Or you're going to hit on the timeline and prove yourself worthy of living in a much better place. So that it's the midsection for this gig where the rebels were cast down into that lower fourth dimension. In the Kabbalah, it's the place of the shells, you might say. Okay, yeah, it's a midpoint. It's not quite hell, but it's certainly not heaven, and it's not at the level of here either, the Middle Earth, as the Lord of the Rings tell us. And so that's how I've understood. I mean, I'm flipping heck. I'm working on old school stuff, and I might have even got some of them points wrong, but that's basically the idea of what's going on. And this is why it's important that you're choosing your timeline. And if you're studying this doctrine on emotion, then you're following the wrong path. So you're not heading to anywhere good, regardless of what your emotions have got you believing. So it's a mimic. It's all a big mimic of the ultimate, formation of this place. And Ragnarok is the time of the destruction of the realm of the Borbello, or the Elohim. And that's all the gods and goddesses. All of them. Odin, Zeus, yeah, Allah, Yahweh, all of these names are referenced in the old school stuff as the Elohim, or Barbello as they call them. So the knowledge about the mistranslation of the Hebrew is very, very important. In fact, it's more important than I think people might give it credit. So the placenta is now a thing, and it's referenced on paper, and a conjoining must take place to steal the essence of the baby as the res for the trust. The baby is still in rem, because of course it's outside the trust. It's a living, physical, flesh and blood thing. And so the essence of the baby has to be put into the res, and it's a sort of, it's a basic robbery because it's done in front of mum and dad. It's not a theft where it's done in secret. So the baby's still in rem, so that's outside the trust. And thus the baby would then be seen to be the benefactor. Yeah? The surname belongs to the church, the Holy See. It is a perpetual instrument. Now, when I actually found the speech, which was Pope Francis' General Audience in Peter Square, Wednesday, the 25th of June 2014, he basically said, "We are not isolated and we are not Christians on an individual basis. Each one on his or her own, know our Christian identity is to belong. We are Christians because we belong to the church. It is like a last name. If the first name is I am Christian, the last name is I belong to the church." Yeah? Now, I'm sure I had some other data that actually said surname, but I've gone through that much stuff in these last years, I'm got lost. So, I know I've papped on about this before, but now I've actually sourced it again, and I've got it. This guy isn't what you think. This guy is no pope. This guy is a player for this adversary system. So I think Archbishop Vigano is correct. And then if he's referencing and representing the real church, then he is the real pope. Whether this commercial system accepts and acknowledges it or not, it doesn't really matter. So if you still hold to your faith as a Catholic, then you need to see that. This Pope and the Vatican system itself has got no relevance at all to the faith that you hold, would be my caution. Now, the fact that this is all being held in by the Vatican as a corporate entity and a state, which we now know that the Church of England has been handed over as to a Secretary of State, which is appointed to this. The placenta being abandoned and claimed by the state, which holds the lease from the Holy See, is named in the Admiralty grammar. So there's a leasehold going on here with our estates from the Holy See to these governments, and the administrative level of these commercial governments is the United Nations. That's what it is. It's a governmental administration body. So it's a world government. And of course, then it's got its offshoots. It's got the World Health Organization. It's got UNICEF. UNICEF is claiming all our land and properties into trusts. Again, for this global government. World Health Organization is carrying the duty of care for your health. Yeah? So when you start to look at it like this, you're actually starting to break down this global government, what it is. But ultimately, it's all a leasehold from this Vatican state that was set up in 1929 by the fascists. Yeah? It's so important that we start to recognise that is what's happening. So the midwife then operates for this Vatican lease, but as a priestess, as opposed to a commercial. The doctor is the commerce in this ritual. It's the midwife who eats from the fruit of the womb, which is the placenta, on behalf of the church state. But it should be Vatican state, because I think we have to really now see there's a separation between what was the Roman Church and what is the Vatican. You know, and I've said this before, people think, well, it's been going on forever. The entire Inquisition throughout the ages was carried out under the Talmudic law. There's no law in the Gospels that would allow that. None. That's how long this has been in, you know, Talmudic law. Anything that kills, ordains murder by killing, by whatever means they present it in sophistry for the legal, it's the Talmud in play. It's as simple as that. So she's the priestess, the doctor is the commercial accountant, you might say, and the registrar, what would we call the registrar? He's the holder of the live born birth record, as it were. So he holds that document. So then he is ultimately, you might say, the executor. And again, he is appointing offices within the corporate state to act in his stead. So that's council, that's police, it's military, it's all these things, these offices are appointed and officiated by the registrar. Because he's ultimately the middleman between this Vatican system and you and everybody below it. So they're very important, these registrars. And now they know they're telling lies. They're telling big fibs, which is what they told me when I asked them if they were legally trained. So they do tell big fibs. So at least we can see now that by definition of their action, they are operating for the adversary. Okay, so which ties in the Vatican as the same, because that's who they're operating for. There is no ambiguity in this when you apply the intellect over emotion. So she eats from the fruit of the womb and then encourages the earthly father to join with her and assign his surname to the fruit, and within it the sins of the father. The doctor then assigns the paperwork into the body corporate, and the entire gig is said to be lost at sea, or sea, and becomes a child, an infant, abandoned by the mother, and the state must come in as the custodian for the orphan child, and then it assigns custody to the parents, not mother and father, to the parents. So everything's an assignment. Once they've got you fixed in it, as parent, the baby's a child, it's an orphan, abandoned, they've got it in custody and they're assigning you like a foster. You're not even adopted it, you're fostering it really, which is why they can tell you that they're going to fine you if you don't take it to school, etc., etc. Yeah? This is the swap that takes place on paper and forms the trust the church and state administer. The parents must comply with the corporate system, which moves to ensure the child is programmed to see itself as the fiction. They must answer to the conjoined name. School attendance is mandatory, from which each morning the child is programmed to answer to the conjoined name. Yeah, every morning, isn't it? Sean Young, yes, miss. Every morning. Every morning. And then off you go into assembly on with Christian soldiers and all that bollocks. Where are we? The method by which the child must be taught is mandated by the social state. So the social state is telling you how this child has to be taught. You don't have a say. And everything is commanded by the body corporate, which feigns the pretense of a de jure national land system but is a de facto admiralty body. Yeah. Duty of care is the mantra of the corporate, or the body corporate, underlined with the maxim of health. Remember, it's that health number that's formed first, then the concept, the human, or the monster. And this is the New World Order, if we think about it correctly. So something preceded the birth in the hospital. Well, as I've said, it's the assignment of an NHS number. Then the construct is created or conceived. So when mother connected with the midwife, the health visitor, a number was created and the concept formed. The concept came first and then the number adjoined. The concept is that of the human life, which according to Valentine's is defined as a monster, an entity that cannot ever hold sovereignty and must be caged as a creature of sin. The human concept is given the rights of personage, which act as the rules by which the human concept will be governed. As the child reaches the age of consent, he unwittingly identifies as the concept and thus admits to being subject to the rules of commerce and subject to the dominion of the holy elect, because he's a sinful little creature. In the action of taking the placenta, and because they do this before your eyes, is actually an act of robbery. They create the trust account and the placenta is the res which they've weighed and then borrowed its weight in gold from the Vatican Bank, which presents itself as the Bank for International Settlements. The registrars act as the holding companies for the asset which is now within a trust, and by identifying as trust res the placenta, you forsake your Heavenly Father's creation of the flesh and blood and become the subject matter for the earthly kingdom, the world, which is controlled by the adversary. Now, think about BlackRock and Vanguard. They're just holding companies. Yeah, they're the S-corps. Ultimately, the beneficiaries of which would be the private trust, ultimately held by the Holy See families, or the, what do they call it? The fund, I can't remember what they call it. I forgot. Fondy, is it? I think. That's the old money accumulation kind of stuff. And copies of certification are created, and as a shareholder of the trust, which is what a certificate is. Yeah? When you were issued a certified copy of an entry of birth, that is a certification of your interest as a shareholder of the trust. Now, the short form isn't, but the long form is. You are given a copy, but yet another deception is in play. The long form certifies the first name and the evidence of your shareholding. A shareholder is a director. Yeah? That's what a shareholder is, always a director. They may, in some points, be the secretary. So is the registrar a secretary? Possible. But that long form is your evidence of the interest that you are a shareholder and thus, by right, a director. But then they offer a second certificate that certifies the joinder with the surname. This removes your shareholding and rights as a beneficiary. The rights of a director, you've lost it. You cannot direct, you cannot administer, you cannot be enriched. The state must appoint an executor to hold to account the trustee, is who you've become, who has sinned, who has broken the statutes governing the human concept, the person. Yeah? Make sense? So copies of certification are created, and as a shareholder of the trust, you are given a copy, but yet another deception is in play. So the long form certifies the first name and the evidence of your shareholding. And of course, the shareholder is a director. But then they offer a second certificate that certifies the joinder with the surname, and this removes your shareholding and rights as a beneficiary of the rights of a director. And so you cannot direct, and you cannot administer, and you cannot be enriched. The state must appoint an executor to hold to account the trustee who has sinned and who has broken the statutes governing the human concept, the person. Can you see how that plays? The trust is formed, the certification has been issued, they can trade the asset on the stock market as of 1933. And they did. And they do. So in essence, they've formed a trust to which we are ignorant. We have no idea how the game is set against us. We do not understand what a trust is or how a trust operates. We are blind and we are dead in the eyes of commerce. Now let's get back to using intellect. Okay? So blind and dead. Now I remember a chap talked about this and he said, so it is knowledge that turns a blind man to see. And knowledge, of course, is not something you gain from the emotions. Knowledge is something that you gain from applying the intellect. So it is knowledge that turns a blind man to see. It is knowledge that makes a dead man live. Did you get that? So what we're doing here, we're applying the intellect again to a script that everybody runs around on, comprehending it by emotion. We are drowning in the sea instead of walking on the water of commerce. Can you see where this is going, can't you? Now I remember the testament to a man, because it is a testament to a man. We don't know whether he said it. He could have just told everybody to fuck off. We don't know. Who gave knowledge to everybody without cost and remedied the aforesaid realities. He made a blind man see, and he brought a dead man back to life. And they say he walked on water. Did they not? Intellect applied to the same thing that billions and billions of people have been reading forever and ever and a day. You come up with a different gig, don't you? Can you see what I'm saying here? Yeah? Again, we've applied chemistry, we've applied astrology. It means a different thing because you're not swooning on emotion, believing anybody that makes a claim to be an expert in something. You're using intellect and applying it to the comprehension of the words that you're reading. If everybody did that, the adversary would lose all his power in an instant. So behind this deception is the absolute description of human trafficking, because this is exactly what they're doing. They're trafficking humans. The whole system. But they've got you looking in tunnels over here. Because Q said. And I'm not saying it's not going on. Human trafficking, your mind doesn't think about it. Its emotions go, tunnels, the poor children, tunnels, Trump, tunnels. You get me? That's emotions, comprehension. Intellect, you're going to say, well, hang on a minute, this fucking trafficking us all here because we're all running around as humans. So it's all in there in plain sight. Social services are taking kids off your left, right, centre because you've not obeyed the statutes, because you're a parent and it's a child. And you're only a foster parent. You're only fostering. So this is behind this deception is the absolute description of human trafficking. They traffic the concept they conceived and own, which is the human monster. you are almost a slave. But while you have legal rights, you still have a chance. Because you see, the definition of a slave is one who has absolutely no legal rights at all. So you're not quite a slave, but it's coming. That's the next gig. The next move for these traffickers is to move the system into a new trust, the Noahide Trust. In this arc, you lose the legal right, you become a slave, and by their twisted logic, everything is by your ignorant consent. Can you see where it's going? The trust is set up with you as the absolute beneficiary and as the deposit of your body, the benefactor, but they play a game of diminishment of your standing with language and grammar. And of course, how many people out there have studied language and grammar? No, they'll study French or Spanish. Well, it's fine. But if you want to understand your predicament, you better understand two languages that matter. And it's not Latin. It's English and French. Latin's good for understanding the bigger picture. But if you want to get to grips with understanding the adversary's trap, or the undoing of the Almighty's word, English and French. I mean, I got about as far as je m'appelle and enculé. But that's just me. I know there's smarter people out there that have paid attention. And kudos to you. To move you away from your inherent rights, they must get you to hold the surname that the church holds ownership. Then you are in sin. You are the infant lost at sea, and in trying to break free from the dominion of the state, you are seen as a sinner. So the more you try and get away and free yourself from it, the more you're sinning. It's a win-win situation for these nut jobs. The more you try, the more you're in sin. You couldn't make this stuff up, could you? And because you're in breach of the statutes governing the concept. So you're like a fly in a bottle while you're running around as a human person, or a human with the rights of a person. You don't stand a chance. You know, and I watch some of these so-called intellectuals on and they're going, this is an attack against humanity. And I'm like, for fuck's sake. God, are they really that thick, or are they playing the game? I mean, I don't think they know, so I think they just let loose because they've copied the system, they've copied the gig, and they're using all the wrong terms because they've not studied the right things. They've not applied their intellect, they've copied, got a master's degree, they've been told the fantastic and amazing, away they go. Away they go. So when they've seen what's happened in this last 4 years, they're like, oh, gobsmacked, but they're still running around on the same terminology. And still playing in the game for it. It's like, it is such a trap, a prison, and it's a mind job. You know, the prison is in here. And oh God, you are the prison warder of your own prison. It's, honestly. So, you know, in trying to break free from the dominion of the state, you were seen as a sinner in breach of the statutes governing the concept. The human person. You will pay by giving them access to the account. First, then again as a trustee holding the legal title. If you go to prison, an admiralty term, then your time spent in there will be taken from your trust account. Ergo, everything you do in commerce finances the mimic, the corporate empire. Your sin funds the adversary to further its grip and to expand its hand. I mean, Pandora's box exploded in our minds. And we can't get out. We can't get out because of that. It's intellect that's required. And that there endeth that gig for a bit. But then we've got some questions that I think... So these are questions that are sort of come up in our investigation that we are moving to answer. Now, I'll put this out for you to look at because you might come up with answers. Unless you You're playing with yourself. But if you're interested, you might have a look at some of these. And if you do, send them along, and then we can expand our gnosis. So as far as prenatal goes, the question is, what is the doctor's procedure once he knows a female is pregnant? Because the priestess is the point of contact, but then it's the doctor that's running the gig. So what is a doctor's procedure once he knows a female is up the duff? So then in the delivery room, can we keep the placenta? Can we eat it? I know that's what animals do, but they used to do, didn't they? They used to eat it because it's full of all the protein. But we shouldn't be doing anything with it until that 1/3 of blood in the placenta goes back into the flea bag. Let that be a lesson to everybody. And if you know anybody that's pregnant, spread that. 1/3 of that baby's blood is in the placenta when it's born. It needs to be stayed, not severance, until that 1/3 of blood goes back into the flea bag. Then you've got an healthy flea bag. And don't let them stick it. Don't let them poke it. And don't let them take it away for that prick. Then the next questions that we could do with really fully knowing is who informed the state that the son or daughter was born? What is registration? Is it to give away? Who needs to register? Who must be registered? What is the event being recorded? What is the certificate of birth? What is the certificate of live birth or live birth record? Can anyone's birth certificate be ordered by anyone? What is the difference between a long and short form? Has an estate been created? Is an estate created by virtue of the birth certificate? Where is the statutory seat and principal place of business for the created entity? Where is the accounting for the estate? Who owns the securities for the estate? What is the relationship between the state and the mother and father? Will the relationship be corporate or partnership? Who owns the agreement? Is there an agency relationship in place? And where is it? And who's the principal? Who is the trustee? Who is the agent, principal and primary executive? Which parties will be informed of the birth registration? Is an adhesion agreement or contract created between the state, the father, the mother, or my son or daughter? Is the registrar aware that all freedoms are reserved? IMF, where is the master file? And there endeth the Sunday sermon. Oh my God, it's nearly 2 hours. I've been rabbiting on all that long, I didn't realise. Oh my goodness. Well, we'll flick back to what you're doing. Or in fact, I want you to look at this. Because they're pretending, there's 2 guys here, and they're pretending that they're against Israel and for Islam. Where am I?
Being asked to vote for you should know who's bankrolling your campaign.
That is why the Labour Party set up those rules.
But you won't tell us. The other candidates in this contest have published who is bankrolling their campaign. You seem to be hiding behind this process. Why won't you simply tell us tonight who are your 5 biggest donors?
We can reveal that Keir Starmer's leadership campaign was actually bankrolled by arch-Israel lobbyist Trevor Chin. Chin is the president of one of Israel's national institutions, the UJIA, which funnels money into settlements and has even been found to bring students from this country on trips to stay in illegal settlements in the West Bank. Trevor Chin is also on the executive board of BICOM, Israel's largest lobby group in this country, which is the parent organization of Luke Akehurst's We Believe in Israel. BICOM today is currently headed by Richard Pater, who is a reserve in the Israeli military and formerly was employed by the Israeli Prime Minister's office. It is from there that Luke Akehurst has launched his own Israel lobby group. Luke Akehurst was a consultant for arms firm Finmeccanica, now known as Leonardo, which has billions of pounds worth of deals with the Israeli military. Luke Akehurst was mentioned by Israeli political officer at the embassy, Shai Massoud, in the Al Jazeera documentary, The Lobby.
So Luke Akehurst is the director of We Believe in Israel. He's one of the best to be inside in all the parties. There's not a lot of people like him.
This individual could very well be a minister of state very soon. We Believe in Israel, Akehurst's project, which, as Shai Massoud mentions, shares an office with BICOM, has admitted to having a range of stakeholders which include the Israeli embassy. This organization that Akehurst runs sought to remove my music from Spotify. The campaign manager at We Believe in Israel at the time was Rachel Blaine. Today, Rachel Blaine is the director of public affairs at the Conservative Friends of Israel. When Conservative MP Alan Duncan stood to be selected as the foreign minister, the Conservative Friends of Israel militated against him. In fact, Duncan even went so far as saying the Conservative Friends of Israel think they control the Foreign Office, and they probably do.
I was offered the job of foreign minister, implicitly to be in charge of the Middle East. And before it was even announced, the top apparatus of the Conservative Friends of Israel used their influence in number 10 in the Foreign Office to lobby to stop me getting it, quite simply because they don't approve of my views on Palestine. The way in which forces lobbied to stop me is evidence of the fact that this is a very, very improper relationship, and that Jewish support, which we welcome and encourage, should be decoupled from representation within UK politics of funding allied to the interests of another country.
So Luke Akehurst employed somebody who went on to work for the Conservative Party's Israel lobby group at the same time as he was on the NEC of the Labour Party. Before working for We Believe in Israel and managing the campaign against me, Rachel Blaine was public affairs intern at the Board of Deputies. Throughout the Corbyn years, the Board of Deputies were inescapable. They did everything they could to bring down Jeremy Corbyn. But something that went unnoticed was the 2020 Trustees Report by the Board of Deputies. In it, and I quote, the Board of Deputies states it has a close working relationship with the Israeli embassy and strengthened links with the IDF spokesman's department and the Ministry of Strategic Affairs. Interestingly, Rachel Blaine notes on her LinkedIn account that she worked at an unnamed international embassy in London. Prior to that, Blaine had worked for the Zionist Federation, where she quote-unquote created dossiers to counter anti-Israel activity. The march of the Labour Party deeper and deeper into the clutches of the Israel lobby continued. And under Starmer's leadership, the Labour Party accepted a £5 million donation from Israel lobbyist Gary Lubner. Gary Lubner also simultaneously a key funder to the UJIA. Another interesting aspect of this capture of the Labour Party is the case of Asaf Kaplan, an individual who emerged out of Unit 8200 in the Israeli military. It monitors Palestinian communications and uses that information to blackmail them into becoming collaborators. Now, why would Keir Starmer employ Asaf Kaplan from Unit 8200 in the Labour Party office to carry out quote-unquote social listening? Ultimately, the Labour Party is a criminal conspiracy against its membership. And even the information that I've relayed in this video is merely the tip of the iceberg. How would...
Now, we've talked about that Kaplan before. Because now this, so on the one hand, okay, with what we've just witnessed with all this riot, we are supposed to believe that this Labour Party are very, very angry at the natives, English, and are in full support of the Muslims, okay, and making a big fuss of Islamophobia. You see, what I'm trying to get across is the fact that what they're trying to do is encourage Muslims to act stupid, to start to express what in most cases is an emotional belief that they have in their approach to their own religion. Because they certainly don't apply the intellect to the ethos at all. They're basically going and running on belief as decreed by the imams. Now, so we're supposed to accept that Labour are on the side of Islam, yet we can just see there that the main funding and thus control is coming from the so-called opposition. Now, this guy is the brother-in-law of Sadiq Khan, okay, who's crying his eyes out at the moment. He's saying if Trump gets in, they're all scared to death, blah, 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 blah. And he's a Labour guy, Sadiq Khan, okay? He's all Labour. Now, this is his brother-in-law speaking in London, okay? And this is the 24th of August, 2024. Just listen to this.
And the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, when they were calling to Islam the people that were in the Mecca, they faced oppression, they faced boycotting, they faced all kinds of hardships, and the Prophet ﷺ said, by Allah, I will continue calling them until Islam becomes dominant or until they kill me. And that, for us, brothers and sisters, is the example that we have to follow, because we live in a world where there is oppression. And the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba.
You know, if ever there's never been so much encouragement for the negative of Islam than we're seeing in this Labour government. And yet, we can see clearly who's funding and controlling this Labour government. So they are going all out to create civil unrest on these lands. And as we've seen, you know, they've got the fire starters, Tommy Robinson. There's many more, and we don't have to name them, who are always subtly encouraging people to get out and start doing battle. But my worry is more than anything because of the fact I know that most Muslims are not intellectually followers of Islam, they are emotional followers of Islam, then I do fear that it is there that this Labour Bolshevik party, who they intend to get excited and rise up for this civil unrest. Now, you know, it's difficult to call because, of course, I know a lot of Muslims that were born here and they, you know, even though they're Muslims, they're still, whether they like it or not, or Western in their approach to life, the way they see things. But the mass importation of all these backward subculture idiots and the mix of ISIS as well as UN soldier kind of characters, it's at such a level that they alone could be enough to be excited by this Labour government to actually begin civil unrest, irrespective of us natives and irrespective of Western-born Muslims. And I think if we can think in those terms, both English and English-born Muslims, then we're actually starting to use our intellect in relation to what it is that's actually being carried out right in front of our noses. And so the lesson being, Tommy Robinson, love him or hate him, he's a player for the same group that are funding this Bolshevik system that's pretending to be opposite to that. You've got to see that. It's so important. And it's both sides that have to see this. And, you know, so far, in truth, I've been impressed with what's happened after these riots in relation to... There's no furore going on amongst the Muslim communities here where I am, up in the north at least. I don't know what's going on elsewhere, especially in the cities. But that, of course, is probably where there are more of these that have just been flooded in that are actually brain dead and know nothing outside the emotional program that they've been shoved down the necks into kids. So, yeah, who knows what the future holds, but if we use our intellect from this point forward and start to gain control of our emotional self, we stand a good chance of stopping this evil from taking root here if we all work against it, regardless of what culture it's coming from. We have to separate ourselves now through intellectual knowledge of the fact there's morality and immorality, and you're picking your side by definition of the characters that you choose to follow. And so that does end the Sunday sermon, and I will have a quick look at who's arrived, what we've said, and then I think we'll call this a gig. It's what? Oh my word, 2 hours, okay. Quillapoth, that's right. The Quillapothic realm. So, where are we? Oh, good grief, you've been doing quite a bit of chat. So we've done I got up to Brabus. Brabus is my Telegram moniker, says AMG Maniac. LFX thumbs up. New Pit. Whooping cough jabs being pushed on the pregnant women. Nice. Just had one baby get a booster. Big E says actor non-verba. Sparky Lee, I folks wouldn't let me post till now. Only happens with channels that talk reality. And I can count them on one hand. Thank you for that, Sparky Lee. First show I've caught live for time. Sean always smashes it, legend. Thank you very much, sir. Recycling Gestapo. Yes, Sean. And everyone at the Wise Asylum. Benefactor says, one Evan, Heavenly Father. Benefactor, Rem and Rez. Yep. Lorraine. Hello, everyone. I'm new here. Hello, Lorraine. Lorraine says, my other half has been watching your podcast for the past couple of years, Sean. Good on him. I hope he's learned something. Mew Pit. Hello, Lorraine. Welcome to the Wise Asylum. Lorraine, and Mew Pit speaks very highly of you, Sean. Thank you, Mew. Mew's a diamond. Where are we there? Let's have a look. All good bar was blah, blah, blah. I was with my daughter when she gave birth, and the midwife doctors asked her if she wanted the placenta. Did they really? Well, that's good. That's excellent. Thanks for that. Evening, says Debbie, just back from the big smoke. Hello, Debbie. All right. Oh, yeah. I remember last time you went abroad, where you went. Yeah, I don't know. Welcome, Debbie. Remy's Spirit says Benefactor. Slipknot says Quillipoth. Yeah, exactly, Slipknot. Thanks for that, Trev. David says the Gnomes of Zurich. I've had no problem with Zurich, and that's where my website's been for a long time. Zurich is not Geneva. You know? Genesis of Eve, as it were. So I'll big up Zurich all day. I've never had a problem. They've looked after me. Benefactor, the terms Heavenly Father and Holy Father are both used in Christian context, but they refer to different aspects or titles within the faith. And he gives the difference. Heavenly Father is a term commonly used by Christians to refer to God the Father, who is believed to reside in heaven. Holy Father is a title used primarily within the Roman Catholic Church to refer to the Pope, who is considered the spiritual leader of Catholics worldwide. Lorraine says, birth, deaths and marriage records were stored at Somerset House until 1970, until they were all digitised. Thanks, Lorraine, and we know that Somerset House had a fire last week. Did it actually destroy Somerset House? Does anybody know? Because I've not had time to get my head stuck in him. To be honest, for the last few days, I've actually been having a rest. So I didn't really get my head into any current news, to be fair. Jerry says, UNESCO Heritage or National Beauty, then it's in the Trust rewilding programme. Absolutely. Debbie says, Sean, have you been to the Vatican? I have very bad energy. I've never been to the Vatican, no. Lorraine says, there was a fire at Somerset House last week. Do you think the old paper records were still stored there? Quite possibly. Benefactor, Lorraine ICCS Strasbourg, France, is the institution which holds all the records, BC, etc., overseen by the whole of the sea. Well, are they just digital, Benefactor, you know? Jerry says, all monster, a thing, unable to inherit. Yeah, cannot be sovereign. Lorraine, Benefactor, thank you for this one. Do we apply to the ICCS for our records or to the hospital we were born? No, you still apply in here for yet. They've just all been centralised in there for when they get us back into Europe, if they can. Benefactor says, we're in contact to contact Sean or contact me. Thank you, Benefactor. My other half has been following Sean for a couple of years. I've lost it. Where did that go? And there's a much better understanding. This is my first time here watching. So, Benefactor says your NHS number is linked to your birth record, which is sent to the local registrar. Without the hospital's record, the local registrar cannot create a birth certificate. Lorraine says, yes, we can keep the placenta. I was with my daughter when she gave birth, and the midwife doctor had asked her if she wanted to keep the placenta. Well, that's really good news. Anything that sort of contradicts what we're all looking at is good, if it's to the benefit of us. So that's really interesting. I'd like to know if anybody else is aware of that being offered as well. That's a good thing. So Benefactor says, is the placenta the given name, the credit to the baby, obviously by the father, son, the debtor? You see, now personally, we've gone through all this placenta stuff, haven't we, over these years? And I'm still not convinced that that's what they're doing, because it doesn't sit well, as though we've either found the end game of it, or is it just a diversion? Do they actually need the placenta to nick the baby when it's being offered up on a platter by mum and dad? You know, it could be just a diversion, that placenta thing. So if you start throwing it, hoping they'll start throwing it ahead in law stuff. So that is good information. Thanks, Lorraine. Was the silent adhesion contract is established if you say and do nothing, as in your last point? Yeah, absolutely. It was very traumatic birth. Sorry to hear that, but if all had gone well, I would have insisted along with my daughter on keeping the cord attached to the baby until it had stopped pulsating, as I know the baby needs all the nutrients. Yeah, you've got to let it have all that blood. AMG Mania, they also exposed the funding of Tommy Robinson, great channel. The creating division, yes, of course they are. Lorraine says, Tommy Robinson, Katie Hopkins, Lawrence Fox, to name a few, in the mainstream, created unrest. Yeah, absolutely. But you've got Tate, you've got... Have you not... You've got to look at this. Every time one of the shows is faltering in some way, they'll put them through some emotional event so that it's called an emotional canon. So that everybody that follows them feels even more sorry for them. If they're having doubts, goes, oh no, they must be right, look what trouble they're having. You really have to understand the emotional canon. The royals have used it forever. Where are we there? Yep. Robinson is definitely a player. Yeah, of course he is. The actually Lennon. Yeah. Sparky, this channel is one of the very few I give energy to. Well, we're glad that you're on here talking, mate. It's good stuff. What a wonderful Sunday sermon. Thank you so much, Sean. Your podcast has been so enlightening. Well, that's got to be good. Ulick says amen. And Lorraine says hello, Sean. Well, hello to you, Lorraine. Mark, that was brilliant, Sean. Great work. Dime Boy. Hello, Dime Boy. I, the original, the Father, created the gods, the heaven and the earth. Well, he calls himself I who is. So consider that. Dime Boy says in. Slipknot, they use the placenta for cosmetics. They're not putting it in lips, are they, Trev? Is that what they're putting in lips? Because I know they're using circumcised skin for the filler. They use the... Yep. Jane Elliott says, Sean, I was offended. The placenta. Sorry, offended. What am I talking? I was offered the placenta That was 1994, so not as recent as the other poster. Thanks for that, Jane. This is good stuff. Because I really do think, in my heart of hearts, that this placenta and even maybe timelines are just diversions, you know. But it's out there in the big wide world, and we will always keep an eye on it to understand it one way or another, you know. My nurse friend eats a bit of frozen placenta when she was really ill. Brilliant. Yeah, that's a good idea. It's full of everything, isn't it? And made by mum. Lorraine says placentas are also used for stem cell treatments. Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that because it's not a living thing. I have problems with him using stem cells from aborted fetuses because there is the reason why they promote abortion. They need stuff from aborted fetuses. And like Cadbury's and all the Choc Nestle and all these drinks are using aborted fetal cells for a sweetener. The more they get used and accepted by people, the more of a demand there is for abortion, which is a ritual sacrifice by the mother and the father if he's agreed. Benefactor Junior sounds next deception. Oh yeah, he's going to come on as a big god. He's going to become the god of the dream team. He might even take over from Alexia, the fat bitch. AMG Mania, have you noticed how many of these come from Luton? Tate, Robinson, Dooley. Must be a handler working in Luton. Well, I'll tell you what I do know about Leicester. Leicester is a serious centre for the occult. So Luton, yep, you could be quite right there. So I didn't know Tate and Dooley were there. Fine, excellent. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, and Jerry says 100% Sean, thanks for that, Jerry. I will bid you a good evening. Thanks, mods, for modding. Hope you have a good week. It's supposed to get hot. Supposed to have a rebirth of the summer next week, so that'll be good. It's always groovy when we get some sunshine. So thanks for joining, everybody. Thanks for taking part, and I shall see you till the next time.
electronic